Thank you, everyone. Welcome to tonight's ANC 34G regular scheduled meeting. Time is now 7:13 p.m. and we will get started. The meeting order. My name is Lisa Moore. I'm chair of ANC 34G and I'm a commissioner for 3G01. We'll start with commissioner introductions, going down from Commissioner Nash and giving our volunteer grant.
So I'm Peter Gosselin, commissioner for. I'm Peter Gosselin. I'm the commissioner for District 6, which is basically the west side of Connecticut. Almost back to well, technically, signals that will not be heard on long.
Here you in your screen.
Bear with us again.
My name is Commissioner Gore. I represent 3G01. Thank you all for coming tonight. Participants online, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear us clearly? Thank you.
I'm Peter Gosselin. I represent District 6, which is the west side of Connecticut Avenue. No, you still don't? Can you hear it on?
Well,
It's an echo.
this one here. That,
This is,
this one, turn this on.
well, they can hear me out there. I'm worried about,
She said they can't.
you can't hear me out there? Can you tell me how to get us full screen here?
Just go on.
Okay, I'm Peter Gosselin. Whether you can hear me or not, I still represent District 6, which is the west side of Connecticut Avenue with the peninsula to the east. We will introduce. We will.
Please, please.
Okay.
Go on.
I'm ready to go, Lisa.
Hi, I'm Zach Ferguson, I'm Commissioner for Single Member District 07.
Commissioner Nash, please.
Commissioner Nash, and I am the commissioner for single member District 03.
Okay, commissioners, moving on with the agenda. So let me just explain to the public that we are in a regular. The owl is, can you mute the owl while we're speaking until the audience speaks? Is that better? Okay, let me just explain to the audience that we're in a regular ANC meeting. This is not presentation. So we have to follow the decorum, and I will go over some rules of the regular ANC meeting, just so you guys are familiar with that. And that's where we are on the agenda. Brandon, if you could pull the agenda up for the audience, we are at meeting procedures at in adoption of the agenda. So just to let folks know, you're only going to be allowed to speak when you're recognized by the chair. There's a lot of people in the audience. There's a lot of people online. Please, if you want to speak, come to the podium, be recognized by the chair, and you will be allowed to speak. We're going to try to follow the agenda time. There will be some modifications. There are going to be some things that I'm going to ask the commission that we strike from the agenda to give us maximum meeting time with our OP presentation. We also have a portion on the agenda where residents will be allowed to speak. I ask that you keep your comments to 2 minutes. Commissioners will do the same. During this part of the presentation, when we go to OP, we'll allow the community to speak first. Commissioners will follow. Please try to stick to the 2-minute timeline, and commissioners I will ask you all to do the same thing as well. With that, I want to do a couple of additions or changes to the agenda. Commissioners, I'm asking that we add on the consent agenda, the approval for the June 12th, 2023 minutes. And I'm asking that we delete from the 7:30 time slot, the presentation on 3747 Huntington.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. 6-0. Are there, Commissioner Lynch, I see that you're online. Is Commissioner Zeldin, yes, please leave your camera on. Is Commissioner Zeldin on? I believe he is still in travel status. So 6-0. Thank you.
So Lisa,
So we're
Lisa?
moving on the agenda to the ANC 34G resident forum. This is the part of the agenda where we allow residents to ask questions of the ANC. I know we have a very hot topic presentation. If there's no things that you all want to bring to the ANC, we could probably get through this section really quickly and move on to the OP presentation. But I do want to allow people to come forward if there's something that's not on the agenda tonight that you want to bring to the attention of the ANC. Please step to the mic. For those of you that are viewing online, if you have something that you would like to bring to our attention, please raise your hand, use the raise your hand feature, and we'll recognize you.
Hey, Lisa, it's
Okay.
Michael Zeldin.
Sure.
Lisa, can you hear me?
My name is Ron. Thank you again. for the
Lisa?
Two things. First one is I'd like you to consider perhaps forming a subcommittee for transportation and safety. Cover all matters across that realm. And in fact, the community, I think we spent a lot of time in community meetings, talking about various issues, and the synergy of having a focused committee regarding safety and transportation may be a more effective way to bring issues, analyze issues, bring them forward as discussion, and let commissioners interface more productively. Perhaps in choosing that. So that's just one idea. Throwing it out there to consider. Okay, the second point is I'd like you to consider creating what I call an issues law, kind of a consolidated look at all the open issues. These would relate to, for example, where you write, a finding or a recommendation or anything related to a letter where you have an open issue. They're throughout the ANC webpage and documents, resolutions. It'd be one handy way to get a hold of all the issues, the status, who's responsible, due dates, versus having to dig through some of these documents, trying to figure it out. I think I have problems. Maybe you have problems doing the same. But essential issues log are certain parts of data related to everything that you haven't gotten a response to appropriately. And you have a number of those, I'm sure. That might be a more productive way again of letting the community and helping the ANC be a little more productive. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me, is there any other community member that has anything they want to bring before the ANC? They said they did. Any other community members have issues they want to address with the ANC before I respond to Mr. Khan's comments? Okay, Ron, thank you for bringing another set of good topics to us. Regarding the Transportation Safety Committee, I've tried to get one started on the ANC for a while. We have to have people to run that committee. So we'll discuss that in our administrative meeting, because I do believe that is the next committee that we really need to get started and going. So I 100% agree with you on that. On the issues log, I kind of liken it, if those of you who've worked with the government, maybe work with maybe Office of Audit, open recommendations law that they have when they do maybe an audit report and they're waiting for a response from the overseeing agency. I do like that idea too. I think that's a great idea. The only question is who's gonna maintain that? So we've resorted to drafting family members as volunteers. To help us with everything that we need to do to kind of make this ANC run correctly. We do have several candidates that we're going to be in the process of interviewing very soon. So we'll have some hired staff here pretty well. And that seems like a really great project that maybe our hired staff can tap. Come to the podium. Yep.
And I guess also when you get to the podium, speak loudly. That microphone helps you with the Zoom people.
I think everyone's gonna hear
You're
me.
all right.
Believe me, everyone will hear me. I actually have two questions. I'm Cheryl Barnes. And I'm wondering if all the commissioners support Catherine's letter, the top letter that he wrote to the deputy mayor February 9th of this year. That's the first thing. And the other question I have is whether or not you know how tall the potential buildings could be on the opportunity sites if they're, whatever the definition is, NC 18.
Okay, so I think, I know what you're referring to on question one. Question two, I think is best left to zoning commission when they start their presentation. So you're talking about the letter that Councilman Fruman wrote, regarding surplusing?
He did. He wrote it on surplus, he wrote it regarding proposals. He mainly wrote it regarding taking the cost of the process to allow for full community development. I mean, full community participation in the development process. And it just seems like the topics in that letter sort of got lost along the way. And we still agree, our group still very much agrees with what he was requesting of the deputy mayor's office. And we would just like to know whether or not the commissioners also support the things that he was requesting.
Commissioner Gore, can I ask a question?
Mhm.
What is your group?
Chevy voice.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner, I don't have a quick reference memory of the meeting of a letter. Did read it. But in terms of community engagement, I'm very supportive of that, very strong community engagement. We've embarked on a program for expansion, you might know, all community survey, process of developing that. Focus groups for community members, meetings and staking groups. So we are on that course. There were some other things he had in letters. And those included considered adjacent properties, like I said, this property. He had quite an extensive list of items. So if you say, are you agreeing with Paul, there's a lot there to agree to. In broad strokes on the community engagement part, I certainly, for my part, can say yes.
Would you agree to review that letter? Yeah, and and say whether or not you agree with what he's requesting.
I don't know if it's a matter of agreeing with what he's requesting, because me and Commissioner Gosselin spent time with Councilman Fruman and some of his staff before he drafted it. I think it's his intent behind it. So I definitely agree with what he wrote, because I gave him feedback on the letter. But I also think you have to be very careful in terms of intent and what is considered broad community engagement. So I don't want myself or anyone on the ANC to fall into a trap, because that's going to be up to individual interpretation.
Okay.
And I think I have an understanding of, what Councilmember Fruman was talking about. And one of his main concerns was, and I believe there's someone on his staff that's here.
Right behind Cheryl.
I don't want to put her on the spot, but one of the main concerns he had was the community having an understanding of, what was involved in the process of the surplusing and disposition prior to RFP. And since that time, the city is gone to the RRFP process, which kind of does that, puts the community voice in elements that they would like to see in an RFP before the RFP is drafted. So I think that was one of his main concerns that he expressed at the time.
The only thing I would add to that is that we're here in front of the meeting that they fill out.
Okay, thank you.
Can I jump back to your own comments?
Sure. Mhm.
And we are going to be walk through in various single member districts on July 19th with the transportation director for a lot. This is a number of streets, for perspective, traffic calming intersections that are problematic across the ANC. So, certainly, increased focus on transportation is something we're very interested on and very doing.
Commissioners, I would just like to remind you, we got a text, to make sure you unmute your Zoom microphone, which is this microphone, the computer microphone. When you're speaking, so folks on Zoom can hear you clearly. Okay, any other comments from the community, either in person or online? Regarding things that we don't have the agenda, if you want to speak, just come to the microphone.
This position of the site, or we're not on that one yet.
The disposition, you can go on and ask your comment.
About the library director side, are we not on that?
We're not really, but if you want to make a comment on that, you can. Yeah, okay. Okay, so we will move on. I will ask the staff from Office of Planning Manager to introduce yourselves. As some of you guys may know, Office of Planning came to our May 10th special meeting and did a presentation on the draft text amendment for the Civic Core. We've asked them to come back to address some of the concerns that were mentioned at first meeting. And they do have some updates in addition to that to provide us. So, Joel, if you all can introduce yourselves, and I will let you guys go on with the presentation.
Can I pick this up?
It ought to be able
It should pick you up.
Okay. I'm Jennifer Steingasser. I'm with the DC Office of Planning. I'm the Deputy Director for Design, Development, and Preservation. I want to thank you for having us back this evening. We really appreciate the opportunity to come back to you. We were here in May, as Chairman Gord just mentioned. We heard a lot of feedback on our original thinking and our original draft ideas, and we've incorporated a lot of that. We want to go through that with you tonight. With me tonight is Erkan Osberg, here operating our show. Maxine Brown Roberts, and of course, Joel Lawson, who I'm sure you're also referenced used to. So I'm going to turn it over to Maxine, and she'll take it from there. Thank you.
As Jennifer said, we're here to, purpose of this meeting is really to update you and. Can you hear better? Can you hear me now?
That's on Zoom, yeah.
Yeah, they can hear you.
Okay, is that a little better? So the purpose of this meeting is to, many of you were at the last meeting, and to update you on some of the changes that was made based on some of your suggestions. We heard what you had to say, and we took those seriously, and we've made some changes. One of at the meeting the last time, the main focus was on the Civic site, and that we were proposing the MU5 for that property, for this property. And we heard that that was, people were saying that it was not consistent with the comprehensive plan, it was too high, and that sort of thing. And therefore, we went back, and now we're proposing the MU4 PUD. On the rest of the corridor, it's MU4 also, and that's the base, and then we'll talk some more about the exact name that we're calling the new zone. We also incorporated greater building transitions to the existing residential, the adjacent residences. And we also did, we have more stepping down of the massing of the building on the Civic site.
I can take that.
Sorry, Lawson. EU4 is a basic low density mixed use zone. The MU stands for mixed use. It means it allows residential, it allows most forms of non-residential. It doesn't allow industrial. There's some particular uses it doesn't allow. But MU is a basic low density mixed use zone, kind of low to moderate. MU5 is kind of at the high end of a mixed use low to moderate density zone. It's more of a moderate density zone. These are all kind of established in the district's comprehensive plan, which sets out kind of density levels, and then to some extent, the kind of density that's, the kind of zoning that's associated with those densities. So most of our, sorry, I'm stealing your thunder a bit here, Maxine, but it kind of leads to this question. Most of our neighborhood commercial zoning, which is what we're proposing for this section of Chevy, is based on either or ANC. So it forms the base of the zone, and then we kind of take the guidelines from the small area plan, Chevy small area plan, and incorporate as many of those guidelines as we can into the zoning. So it's MU4, but not quite, because there are these other restrictions that a normal MU4 zone wouldn't have. Sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry. How high is what? MU4 is 50 feet. MU5 is 60. Sorry. It's also, sorry. I can't even remember. 65. 65.
We're losing.
Sorry. Yeah, in the district, and I know this is zoning 30, but in the district, the penthouse does not count towards the building height. It can exceed the height under, trying to say, but you're right, penthouse. Anytime somebody mentions the building height or the permitted building height, that will always not include the penthouse. So that's what in MU4 is 50 feet, in MU5 is 65. But we're not proposing MU5 anymore. MU4 PUD. Yeah. Could we go through the presentation? We'll have lots of time for questions, I understand. But some of that is actually coming up in the slides. But we're just introducing the presentation right now. It'll all be there, trust me.
Okay, so just going back a little bit, next slide. Joe talked about the comprehensive plan. So in 2021, the future land use map recommends moderate density residential and low density commercial. And then for the civic site, it added a stripe for local public facilities. The policy map talks about this area being a Main Street mixed use zone, and it's also within the future planning analysis area. The future planning analysis was done and resulted in the small area plan, so that has been done. So the process is that we will do the zoning text amendment. That this is the process that we are in right now.
Maxine, you need to speak into that.
Okay. Sorry. Sorry. So the text amendment, as I said, is the first one that we're going to be doing. And that is to create a new zone to implement the comp plan and the small area plan. Then following that process, we'll do the map amendment, which will be where we're changing the zoning, and it will be mapped on the zoning, on the new zones that are created. The zoning text and map must not be inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. And you'll see that as we go through, we talk about the levels of development, MU4, which reflects the comprehensive plan recommendation. And the zoning has to be approved by the zoning commission, and then we'll have public hearings before the zoning commission makes their determination. So again, you can see the corridor, and the property is, the area is zone MU3A. The civic site, which is here, also has a portion that is zone R1B. The proposed zoning that we are here for is to mainly the NC 18, and the civic site will have the NC 19 zone. If you look, you'll also see some small areas that we're proposing the RF1 zone, because those properties are held in joint ownership with some of the properties that are in the NC 18. So we want to provide a transition from the buildings that front on Connecticut Avenue. And so we are giving that a lower density than the NC 18 and keeping those areas in residential. Pardon me? Okay, the NC is a neighborhood commercial zone. And remember, Joel talked about having specific things from the small area plan that relates to this area alone. So that is a new zone that we're proposing. The zoning regulations have a section for neighborhood commercial. And so this is a takeoff from that. So this neighborhood commercial is specific only to this area. And similarly to the NC 19, which would only be specific to the civic site. Oh, RF is a residential zone for the usually like townhouses. That's the category for RF zone.
Are you going to are you going to later in your presentation explain the essential difference between the existing and the proposed?
It's yes, it's on the slides here. Okay. So remember, the MU3A is a low density commercial zone. Okay. And so for the FAR in the existing zone is 1.0 and 1.2 with IC.
Maxine, you're going to have to explain
The
FAR.
floor area ratio, that is the area of the land as against, it's a ratio to the building, how much building you can build on there. Okay. So for the NC 18 corridor, we're using the MU4 base, again, which is the recommendation of the comp plan. And that gives you a 2.5 FAR and 3.0 with IZ. We are proposing that if a builder was to preserve an existing facade of the building, they would get an extra 0.5 FAR. And that would still be within the range. For the NC 19 site, remember again, the last time we were here, we were proposing MU5A. So now we have changed that to the MU4 PUD standard. So we have gone from 3.5 and 4.2 FAR to 3.0 and 3.6 with IZ. So we have lost some FAR because we have gone down to the MU4 zone. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Okay, sorry. The yellow on the chart is what we presented the last time, and the area shaded in green is what we're proposing now. Okay.
So Maxine, could I make one suggestion? I hope people notice on this chart I hope people notice on this chart, the second to last line. So to the question of what is the total height with penthouse, under current zoning, it is 55 feet. The NC 18 zone, it says here, is 70, and the modified NC 19 is 80.
Okay. Good. No. Okay. So, go back. I didn't talk about it. So again, Peter was talking about the maximum height. So on the NC 19, on the Civic side, we had proposed a maximum of 70 feet with IZ, and we're also giving a 5-foot bonus for having an 18-foot tall ground floor. We have eliminated that bonus, and therefore the maximum height would be 65 feet with IZ. Then adding the penthouse, we had proposed 18 feet for the penthouse. We have dropped that down to 15 feet. And if it's a habitable penthouse, it will be at 12 feet. Okay. Again, the total height went from 93.5 feet to 80 feet. And there's also some conversations about the lot occupancy. And we have retained that the residential is at 80% and the non-residential is also at 80%. Usually the non-residential could go to 100%. Okay, next.
I think there's a question over here. You can, I mean, people can do it.
Still required, and the one with the 0.5-degree angle.
Yes, and we're going to talk about that. Yes, and we're going to talk about that a little later in the presentation.
They've asked on Zoom to repeat the question. So the question that Claudia just asked is the setback still required? And to explain, but the 45-degree angle, again, trying to set the back of the building away from the adjacent single-family house.
Yes, and we do have some illustrations to show. Okay. Uh-huh.
And now talking about having found that one happen. It's not I've been doing this 25. So you're 1860 and yes, not very.
Oh, we're gonna have a long. This is the builder meeting.
Yes.
The 18 multiple length that
Mhm.
mean that this development is busy in the 18 quarter.
You're gonna speak under the microphone.
And
Because
actually,
people online, like 85 people.
let's get him that mic. Hold on. Wait, wait right there. You're gonna get that mic. Yeah.
So I can't hear you to speak with your chair.
So, yeah, I'm Ken Mead. I live on Upper Western Avenue on the DC side.
My question is, under the proposal for NPHE, the quarter map that brought included a lot more than just the civic center and the library. And my question is, does this mean that the Wells Fargo people will sell the property and instead put up a 70-foot crossing under your proposal? That's my question.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm Christopher Bay. I have so much questions about this chart.
The designation MU4 PUD, does that mean that any building on the site would have to go through a PUD process in addition to the RFP process?
No, we're just using the standards of the MU4, the PUD standards.
But it's not indicated, but.
No, it's not, no.
Okay, second question about the
That's
penthouse,
a
the
question. That's
space. And
No, it can be recreation space, it can be residences also.
okay, and then third, lot occupancy, 80%. What counts against that 80% number? Does, for example, surface parking or a basketball court, or a pickleball court, are they part of the lot?
No,
Just
no,
wondering.
it has to be, right, it has to be
Okay,
right to go.
We couldn't hear that last part because this isn't working
Oh.
very well. Sorry. He asked about the lot coverage, the 80% lot coverage.
Yes,
And it was a little confusing. So it makes up 80% of the lot. And the rest, I think, is what the question is. Is it considered green space or is it green space plus?
it,
What is?
it
the
can be
structure?
anything, so long it's not a structure.
It does not have to be green space. It's just not the building
That's
itself.
exactly, that's true. Okay. Okay, next. Okay, so moving on, we're talking about the rear setback. On the NC 19, on the Civic side, we had proposed that there would be a 15-foot setback after the building goes up for 25 feet. If there's no alley, then you'd have a 15-foot setback. So what we have changed is that now you have to set back 15 feet from at grade. So, you know, on the floor from the adjacent property line in. And then if there's an alley, then the alley would be 15 feet. So you would have to do that setback. There's also further up where we recommended a 1-to-1 setback above 45 feet. We have also changed that to have the 1-to-1 setback at 25 feet, okay? The side yard setback, usually in the NC zones, there is no requirement for a side yard. But if a builder were to provide one, they would have to have a 6 feet minimum. However, in addition to that, we're recommending that if there is no separation between any property in the R or RF zone, then a 15-foot setback has to be provided. Okay, yeah, so it's from the residential property, okay? The residential property line that the setback would be, okay? And then the other two, the front setback, there's no requirement. You know, we are hoping that along the corridor, people will build to the property line, but there's no requirement for that. And then we have the use permitted on the uses that are permitted in the NC 18 and the NC 19. Again, based on the comp plan recommendation, it's on the NC 19, and the NC 19 is the residential, the civic side, any commercial or other uses, where in the NC 18 is residential, commercial, and others uses. So of course, it's a mixed use. So we can have offices and other things like that. Pardon me? Any industrial use would be precluded.
Could I ask a quick question? This is zoning nerdy, so maybe it's a question to Joel. In all the other neighborhood commercial zones, if you have a PUD in a neighborhood commercial zone, typically you're not allowed to increase the height. So in the NC 18 zone, if someone came in for a PUD in the NC 18 zone, would they be able to increase the height above the 65-foot level?
No. Oh, sorry. I'll speak louder. No.
Okay, and I want to just reiterate, because I didn't really hear what Chris was saying about the PUDs in the M4 PUD standard, development standards for NC 18. It's not, it doesn't mean there will be PUDs in NC 19, it just means that the development standards will be used for NC 19. Correct.
That's correct. And as you kind of said in the first part of your question, there's really no purpose for somebody to do a PUD in the zone. You don't get extra height, you don't get extra density. We're using those provisions because of the language of the comprehensive plan and because of the language of the small area plan, as well as the different designation on the comprehensive plan land use map for the civic site. That's why we chose those different values.
These are true maximum.
Yes.
That we're talking.
Correct.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks again for coming in and hearing what we have to say. I'm sorry. Can you hear me okay if I don't use this?
No, that's for sure.
Okay. 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 I'm not used to speaking into something like this. Snowball? Okay. That's great. That's great. We've had our graphics people start to do some illustrations. Sorry? Once again, I'm Joel Lawson. I'm the Associate Director with Development Review. You're welcome. Certainly at the last meeting and in our meetings with ANC people and with conversations we've had with individuals as well, people have been stressing that they really need to see what this looks like. It doesn't look significantly different from what's in the small area plan, but we've had our design people start to do up some illustrations. They're a little bit complicated because, as you know, there is a little bit of terrain change in Chevy Chase. There's a little bit of up and down, and having that reflected in the drawings, can be a little bit difficult for them to do, for our design people to do. But we started to map out what zoning might allow. I just want to stress a couple of really important kind of provisos here, kind of important notes. We're not showing you what's going to be built on a property because we don't know what's going to be built, or in certainly on the commercial corridor, we don't know that anything is going to be built. What we're trying to show you is what the zoning might permit. So zoning doesn't tell you what's going to be on a piece of property. It sets some maximums for what could be on that piece of property, but it certainly doesn't tell you what's going to be on that property. And certainly for the civic site, there'll be all of the processes that you're going through with DEMPED right now to help them determine what that building is going to look like. So I think we can go to the first image. So we've got a couple of images from kind of eye level view from various streets. So this is, and you'll see sort of it's kind of small on the screen. Sorry about that, but there's kind of a key map in the corner that basically shows you approximately where that view is taken from. So you're kind of standing in that point, looking north on Connecticut Avenue. So you can see a building that would be possible on the Wells Fargo site. So it's one floor of retail, non-residential, and then 3 floors of residential on top of that, plus a penthouse. And you can see another example on the other side of the street beside the Avalon. We just chose a property at random. If that's your property, we aren't singling you out, but it was just kind of a basic, typical property along this section of Connecticut Avenue, so we chose that one. And it's the same, obviously the same kind of a height, 1 level of retail, and then 3 levels of residential above. You can see the setback above the 3rd floor, which is one of the requests that we received to have that small setback. The next one is kind of flipped. It's looking south on Connecticut Avenue. This is where you can see the Wells Fargo site again. Oh, by the way, all of these are going to be of the same properties. The Wells Fargo site, the site beside the Avalon, and the Civic site. So you'll be able to compare from illustration to illustration. We've not mapped out all the other buildings and all the other properties and what could be built on those, because in the commercial corridor, it's fairly typical what could be done. So here you can see, once again, the level of retail and then 3 levels of residential above on the Wells Fargo site. On the Civic site, you can see the 1 level of civic use, library and recreation center, and then above that, 4 levels of residential, which is what would be permitted within the height that's now being proposed. Next slide. We took a couple of shots down some of the side streets towards Connecticut Avenue. So this is down McKinley, looking towards Connecticut, and the building you see is the Civic site. You don't see either the Wells Fargo or the site beside the Avalon in this instance. Oh, sorry, did I say east? I'm sorry. Looking. It says east and west on your slide. It's wrong. Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Absolutely. Yep. Sorry about that. Yeah, so you're looking east on McKinley. Those are kind of typical houses that you can see on the side. We've tried to incorporate some of the grade change that exists along McKinley, and then a building form on the Civic site. Next. I'm sorry, it's wrong on the slide. You're looking west towards Connecticut Avenue. Sorry about that. Okay, next slide. This one is actually also looking west. This one is looking, no, this one's.
No, this is looking, you're looking towards Connecticut.
This one's looking
right?
west.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry about that. So this was also looking west. This one's on Northampton Street, looking towards Connecticut Avenue. You can see it on the key slide right there. So you're kind well. You. Yeah, like I said, this is not a design for the site. This is to show you what the kind of massing that the zoning would allow might look like. This is not a design for the site. It also doesn't incorporate some of the things like your goals for open space on the site, for playgrounds, for that kind of thing. That would be developed through working with DEMPED on the RRFP process. Like I said, the zoning doesn't tell you, neither do these illustrations, what will be built on this site. We're trying to give you a sense of what the zoning provisions themselves are.
But Joel, could I just help with Connor's question, which is, are there side lot setback requirements? I don't think there are. Is that correct?
There are not.
So that's the reason why you don't see.
As there is not typically in our commercial zones and
Pass
neighborhood
that one
commercial
at the
zones.
podium and you go on and ask your question.
I have the sidewalks, and this looks like it goes right up to a sidewalk. What does the zoning say about space? There are trees there now. Nobody else is allowed to take out trees. Is the city allowed to take out existing old trees?
No, the trees are probably on what's called public space, which is the road right of way. So the road right of way includes the street itself. Can't hear me? The trees on the site. Okay, well, 2 questions. If there are street trees, then they're on public space. They're not part of the private property, so they're not being built upon. If there are trees on the property, and I believe that there are, there are, including some legacy trees. And I believe that the Urban Forestry Division of DDOT is looking at those trees now to assess their health, and the legacy tree can't be removed. So that could be, absolutely, that could be another example of something that would limit what could be done on the property. We're not reflecting that on these. We're also, by the way, not reflecting the restricted easement over the back half of the property, because that's not what zoning does. Zoning establishes what can be permitted on the site. There can be all kinds of other restrictions that would limit what you can do on that property. And legacy tree is one, and the easement is another.
Hi, I think there's so much mixed messaging here that it is impossible. My name is Judy Leach. There's so much mixed messaging that we're constantly being told, well, we know this, but that's not it. Or, okay, yeah, you want trees, we'll put in trees. Why is it so much mixed messaging? Why don't you come to the plan that
like, okay, that's not the height of the buildings. And that's also the zoning. The zoning, you're kind of misstating the zoning thing, because if you allow the buildings that much height, they'll take it. I mean, I just feel like we're not really talking to each other. And it's so confusing to get a handle on this, because why didn't you bring your drawings that are more realistic? Why are we sitting here debating something that might or might not happen, and might have this side, and might have that happen? Let's be realistic about it.
Well, these do show the height that would be. I'm sorry, do you want to hear the answer? Yeah, okay. So these do show the height that would be permitted. These show the setbacks that would be required. These show the lot occupancy that would be required. What I'm saying is we can't show you a building because the building's not designed. So and that's not the stage we're at with this. Right now, we're trying to establish zoning that's consistent with the comprehensive plan and the small area plan. Within that envelope of what the zoning would permit, a building could be built. And exactly what that building is going to be, we don't know. You don't know either. We just don't know because we're not at that stage of a development yet. That's more a conversation, hear me out, that's more of a conversation to be having as part of our RFP process, which can establish how you want that building, that particular building or buildings to sit on that property.
But that's another mismessage, because not how the community wants that building. It's how big the developers can go.
This is how big the developers can go.
Right.
What we're showing you is how big a building can go.
Just in fairness to the OP people, this is an envelope. I mean, they're presenting you with a picture of what they're proposing should be the envelope, the biggest you can get, what it would look like relative to other buildings on the avenue. There is an argument, there are many people who argue that we should just jam through an RFP and get the proposals from developers, and they will show you real pictures of what they want to build. I have concerns about doing that, because once we get to that stage, I don't think we have very much, we don't think we have influence now, we really don't have it at that stage. So what the zoning people are doing, what the OP is doing here is saying, we've looked at the comp plan, and all of us have various views about the comp plan, but we've looked at the comp plan and we think this is what the envelope looks like. And we're giving you these drawings to give you some sense of orders of magnitude. That's all they're doing. It's up to us to argue with them about the particulars. It's up to us to critique the proposals that come back once they get an RFP out. So it just, at this stage, they're doing the job they're paid to do.
Yeah, I just had one question that I haven't understood since the beginning of this process. Why are you proposing a different NC 19? Why are you proposing a different NC 19 as opposed to, why not just do the whole thing NC 18? I'm just, honestly, I just don't know why that is different.
Sure. No, that's a great question. And it's, again, it's because we're going back to kind of square one of this process, which is the comprehensive plan. And the comprehensive plan includes in its future land use map, which we showed, and in the language, it includes language that promotes the development of the civic site with more housing on it. So what we're trying to do is come up with zoning that would achieve the kind of housing that is anticipated in the comprehensive plan, the small area plan, the Rock Creek West plan, you kind of name it, and have the zoning reflect that. So it's zoning is always based on the planning work that comes before it. Zoning is not a planning tool. Zoning is an implementation tool. So what we're trying to do is implement the planning that's already been done over the last 3 or 4 years for this section of the Connecticut Avenue corridor, and in particular for the civic site. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Carol Brunwald. My name is Carol Brunwald. My name is Carol Brunwald. Okay. I would like to know why the illustrations in the small area plan make, all the illustrations are much smaller. For example, community center, I believe, was portrayed as being 4 stories in this small area plan, and the library, and now we're looking at a building that now went from 93, now it's down to 80. I thought we were supposed to comply with the small area plan, or at least the comprehensive plan, and this sounds like it doesn't comply with any of those things.
Well, actually, it's actually not. The small area plan shows buildings of about 65 feet on the civic site.
Well, if you look at the illustrations and if you count the windows, 2, 3, 4. We'll show them to you.
Okay.
Eric Martell. Why not from now on, we have these meetings?
I can't hear you.
Oh, you hear me?
Yes.
From now on, when we have these meetings, and you can see there's a lot of confusion, right? Bring enough copies of everything you're going to display so that everybody can follow it. It'll cost a little bit of money, but it's only going to be a very tiny percentage of what ultimately everything is going to cost, no matter what direction it's going. You know, that's whatever. Can that be done? So that.
And when you say it's going to be a setback, so many feet, we can actually see in front of ourselves. Otherwise, you know, we're.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just say that for the moment, it's a good idea. For the moment, this is all on the ANC website. It's already posted. You can grab it.
That may be true, but we're not. But
This is going to take some study. So it's yeah.
Hi. My name is Andrea Rose, and I have about 10 questions, but I'm going to start with one.
I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off because I know you have a whole bunch of questions. We do have more illustrations. Do you want to see those before we get into the detailed questions, or would you rather kind of break into questions right now? I'm fine either way, however you want to do it.
I suggest you should, but can I just say, I think we ought to see the other things. They're setbacks. I mean,
Yeah, there's not that much left. But just in case maybe something helps you with your question or.
Why don't we?
Do you want me to wait?
Yes, let him go.
Okay.
Slides and then come back. Thank you.
Next one. So in addition to that, those eye level views, so you can have a better sense of how things fit in, we gave you some aerial views. So these are kind of taken up in the air somewhere. So it's not something you would actually see in person, but it kind of helps to put things in context. So this one shows the Wells Fargo site kind of closer to you, and then the Civic site in behind it. It goes a little bit further down Connecticut Avenue than some of the other street level views showed. And this one is looking south. And next slide. We just kind of shifted a little bit to the west here, but still looking south. So you can see the Wells Fargo site again in the foreground, the Civic site in the center, and then the rest of Connecticut Avenue going down. And next slide. And now we've shifted and we're looking north, basically north, not quite, but looking northish. So now you've got the Civic site closer to you, and then the Wells Fargo site in behind. And you can see the site beside the Avalon also in this one fairly clearly. And last but not least, again, we're looking kind of northish, and you're mainly looking at the Civic site. You're looking at it a little bit from behind this time. So this one shows some of the step backs a little bit better. And then in behind that, the Wells Fargo site.
For orientation, sorry, I'm not getting this. What's the site that's going so much farther into the neighborhood than the others?
That's the Civic site. And next slide. So we did a couple of quick these are not to scale, but they're just to kind of show a relationship of different heights. One of the commissioners suggested we kind of take a look at this. So this is what you see kind of in the middle is what you would typically see on one of the NC 18 sites. And behind it, you can see what's permitted on our low density residential lots. And on the other side of it, you can see what a straight out MU4 would allow. MU4 actually would also allow 50 feet if it's an IZ project. So in this case, there's really no difference between the MU4 and the NC 18. By the way, MU3, which is what you have right now, also allows 3 stories and 40 feet in height. So again, not that much different. In behind is 5333 Connecticut, just to kind of show you what a 90-foot tall building looks like in relationship to the ones that we're proposing zoning for in this corridor. And next slide. This shows the Civic site. So obviously a much taller ground floor, which is what's needed for the library and the rec center. And then the residential above, again with MU4 on the side, and on the side to your right and to your left, what would be permitted on one of the residential zones. And then once again, 5333 Connecticut with its taller height and taller penthouse height in behind that.
The residential is on the left, it says 40 feet?
Yes.
Is that actually 40 feet?
Yes.
Now, or is it
I don't know what the existing house is, but that's what's permitted.
That may even be a 4-story.
No, it can't be. In our residential zones, you're allowed to do 3 stories, but you're allowed to do 40 feet.
What is the 12 feet above the 40 feet?
Sorry, the 12 foot above is the height of a penthouse.
Sorry.
If I heard the question right. Okay.
Can we try to get?
Councilman Mike, if you have questions, please.
I think that's the.
Oh, sorry.
Do you have other slides?
Like 2, 3.
This,
we're pretty much finished. We've already kind of gone through this, so I'm going to kind of skip over this one. This is again kind of the summary of the changes we made since the last meeting last month. And this is the process in the next steps. So you can see there's a lot of steps in a process like this. We're not quite halfway through a process like this. It's all started once again when council approved the comprehensive plan in 2021. That led to the small area plan in 2022, and that led us to start looking at the zoning. Those 2 documents informed us that new zoning was anticipated for this corridor. So right now we're in the community meeting section. Nothing is gone, nothing has been filed yet. That would be what we would start to work on in a next step, whenever that starts. And, you know, it just kind of goes through what that process is. So once we start to prepare a final draft, we would submit that in a report to the zoning commission. The zoning commission, the Office of Zoning, which is the secretariat to the zoning commission, would contact the ANC to let them know formally that it's being filed. We would let you know anyways. So it's okay.
Thanks.
But to let you know formally it's been filed. And then the zoning commission would be able to have what's called a set down meeting. And that basically means that the zoning commission would deliberate whether or not the proposal warrants consideration at a public hearing. They can say no, or they can say yes. If they say yes, then we enter into the zoning commission review process itself. That means more notifications out to the neighborhood, more community meetings prior to the zoning commission public meeting, which is also, as you can tell by saying, a public meeting where the ANC and neighbors and community members are invited to come and comment on whatever ends up being proposed. After the public hearing, at some point, the zoning commission would take what's called proposed action. It's their first vote. Something like this is a 2-vote process. So they would take their first vote, notice would once again go out, and then finally the zoning commission would be able to take final action and the zoning would be approved and published in the DC Register. Once zoning is approved, then somebody could actually start to work on proposals, could work on permitting for getting a building built. That's the process in the next steps. And I know we're kind of in question period anyways, but we're now kind of formally in the question period, so.
Okay, before we go to questions, I'm gonna ask everyone again, please do not shout from your seats because people online cannot hear you. So we need you to come to the microphone. And then we have one person online, Cheryl Wasserman, who has her hand raised. I'm gonna go to you, Mr. Gordon, then I'm gonna go to Miss Wasserman. Okay, Mr. Gordon, Jamie, and then Miss Wasserman.
Hi.
It's fine.
Hi, my name is Robert Gordon. I'm with the Voice. What you heard today, what I've heard today, for the very first time, and I've been studying this for 3 years.
Scares the hell out of me. What I'm looking at is a canyon of buildings
that never entered my mind was a possibility. What I'm seeing
here today
is the Bethesda South. What I'd like to know, and my question is, do people in this audience,
this is good for Chevy Chase?
Well, what I can say
from the point of view of many Chevy Chase residents, we oppose the removal of the commons and its green space. Let's go back to the goal. The goal is to build some apartments and have some affordable housing units. The number of housing units may be small. The size of the apartments will be small. We are resolute against the giveaway, and we will go to court if necessary to oppose the contradictory and incompatible upzoning plan. We will go to court to oppose the thoughtless surplus and disposal process. And the attempt to remove the deed covenant that has protected property values since 1909. Perhaps the DC government should first get its own house in order. According to the Washington Post, more than 1 in 4 of DC's roughly 8,000 public housing units sit vacant at an average length of about 2 years. That would be a worthwhile job for deadpan leadership to tackle, rather than the controversial efforts that divides this community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wait, no, look.
Hang on, hold on. We're not, please. I called out the order of the speakers. I said, Mr. Gordon, Miss Jamie, then Cheryl. Please, let's not disrespect each other in this process. The chair, whoever that may be, right now it's me, will call the order of speakers. Okay, go, Miss Jamie. Everybody hear me?
Yeah.
My name is Jamie Butler. Effort for speak. I'm going to start by thanking those who will be listening to us and coming back to us with some changes in zoning. I also want to say that there are many of us who want to see affordable housing on this site. And we want to see our green space maintained. We want our playgrounds, we want our ball courts, we want our open spaces so we can sit with each other. Some of us want to see it done more creatively than it is now. A playground is a lot better than it is now. 80% lot coverage is just too much. It's too much. It is challenging all that we want to do. It shouldn't be either or, it should be both. It should be both. And I'm not an architect, I'm not a planner, but it seems to me that 60% lot coverage makes a whole lot more sense and would allow this community to have what it wants and to have affordable housing. You can argue here how many units, will it be family units, what's the affordability level, but that's not what we're here to talk about tonight. So I think there are creative approaches that will give us all of this. So I beg you to listen, make those of us who are really organizing for affordable housing and galvanizing support's job a little easier by giving us the zoning we need. So thank you. Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna go online, then I'm gonna come back to those in line. Cheryl, you had your hand up for a while. You can go on and speak.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate.
Hang on a minute, Cheryl. Hold on 1 minute while we get the Al unmuted so we can hear you. Hold on. Got it. Okay, go ahead.
I appreciate being briefed on this and the time you spent. I have 3 questions, very specific questions. In the small area plan, can you hear me? In the small area plan, there were design guidelines that were proposed. And maybe I was under the misimpression that those would be somehow incorporated into some of the zoning requirements for this area. That's my first question. The second is, how does this relate to the commitment to come up with, to develop an RFP for development of the Civic Center that would, that the community could comment on and engage in. And the third is, there were 2 sites that were designated NC 18, I guess the townhouses. And I'm wondering, are there existing proposals for those specific sites, or why those? So those are my 3 questions.
Thank you. The first question first, the first question was about the guidelines in the small area plan. We have incorporated many of those guidelines into the zoning. Things like forming a street wall, having glazing. We came up with a rather unusual one that doesn't exist anywhere else about glazing on upper floors. Typically, guidelines in NC zoning relates just to the ground retail floor. So there's ones about that. There's some use guidelines that have gone in there. So for example, retail, some kind of retail use would be required on the ground floor along the corridor. So we tried to incorporate as many of the guidelines as we could. There were some guidelines in the small area plan that are simply outside the scope of zoning. So for example, there was a guideline that I remember that asked for bay windows on the front of buildings. Well, bay windows are actually, I'm going to get really zoning nerdy here, I'm sorry. They're actually projections into public space. So they're not on the property, part of the property. So zoning can't require a bay window because bay windows are administered through the public space permitting process. So we tried to incorporate as many as we could. And you can certainly check them out. They're all in one particular section in the draft zoning. So you can see the ones that we've proposed to be brought forward. I didn't quite understand the question about the RFP. Maybe I just didn't hear it properly. But there was a question, I think it was about the relationship between the zoning and the RFP. They're really quite, if that was the question, they're really quite separate processes. Like I said, the zoning is based, I'm going to say it one more time. The zoning is based on what the comprehensive plan and the small area plan say should be done. So we're balancing what the comprehensive plan says with what the small area plan says, and that'll form the zoning. And the zoning is, as Peter really put it really well, forms an envelope within which the building must be. It can't be beyond that envelope. It's constrained by that envelope. You don't have to maximize that envelope if you don't want to, but you can't exceed that envelope. So they're a little bit separate issues and separate processes. And I know that DEMPED has been working on our RFP process. So maybe that's a question better for them. There was also a question about NC 18. The NC 18 zone we're proposing for the entire this section of the corridor. So the Chevy Chase commercial corridor would all receive the NC 18 zone, not just the Wells Fargo site or the site beside the Avalon. Those were just examples of sites that would be zoned NC 18. The only exception from that is the Civic site for which we're proposing NC 19.
This really stinks.
Building with that much residential and retail garbage. Total
Peterson's Zoo is silent. I know. I mean, okay.
and no common sense in this number whatsoever.
Thank you. Andrea, before you speak, give us a chance to unmute the owl. There you go. Thank you. And after Andrea speaks, I'm gonna go to online, Smita and Chris Otten.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
We've been told many times that the density distribution on the farm is not living. And that the individual property owners on any Avenue corridor, when they move around to redeveloping their sites, would apply, would choose the zone type where the building they wanted to be developed and go to the zoning commission and apply to the zoning commission. So I'm wondering why every case picking a predetermined zone in NC18 for the entire Connecticut Avenue corridor itself, where it should be just comments. That's one question.
Should I answer that?
Okay.
Thank you. It's a really great question. And it is one that we struggle with. You know, should OP bringing forward the zoning, or should we leave it up to developers to bring forward the zoning? So what we're proposing to do is bring forward zoning which incorporates, you know, guidelines from the small area plan. If a developer came forward, they would ask for MU4. They might ask for MU5, but they would ask for the zone that they think is appropriate. And then that's what would get built. The guidelines would not be incorporated into what they're doing. Sorry, the guidelines would not be incorporated into what they're proposing. They would simply ask for one of the standard zones that we have right now, because NC18 doesn't exist right now. That's what we're creating. So that's why we're proposing to bring forward zoning. But you're not wrong. It's a totally viable option that we just leave the zoning the way it is. It'd be contrary to the direction of the comprehensive plan, but we could do that. And then developers would bring in the zoning that they feel is appropriate when they feel like bringing forward. They would also, I would assume, bring forward zoning that would allow more height and more density, because they'd be asking for PUDs. Well, once again, you know, we're going through that process right now. But yes, when developers come forward, other than the Civic site, when developers come forward, unless they need some kind of relief from zoning, which is possible, but certainly not necessary, then they would be able to build by right under that zoning. So that means they would apply for building permits and they'd be able to do that construction as long as they're conforming to the zoning. Yeah, and that's the case with every zone in the city. You know, you can do something on your property and you don't have to go through an approval process if you conform to the zoning for your property. So that's standard. Every zone has a by right option that they'd be able to build to. Thank you. I'm not quite sure what you mean by standing. I can guarantee you that there'll be a public hearing in front of the zoning commission and that everybody who wants to will be able to participate. And you can provide to the zoning commission, you can provide comments in writing. You can attend their hearing and give your comments in person, or you can do both. Sorry, are you talking about the entire building or the height for the lot? I'll just answer. What we've heard from the library and the rec center is that they're looking at, for their portion of the building, they're looking at heights of between 20 and 25 feet, which would be typical. For the entire building, the height that would be allowed is 65 feet. 65 plus penthouse. I have no idea. I would assume so, yeah. I don't understand the question at all. Sorry.
Hi, my name's Eric Osberg with the DC Office of Planning. I can answer. So the 20, oh, I'm sorry, guys. So the 20 to 25 feet is per floor. So you can see this is a tall floor that we're in right now. So the Department of Parks and Recreation and the DC Public Libraries, for modern facilities, they want to ensure they have enough height for certain kinds of meeting rooms or things like that. So that is the height per floor that they were looking at. I think they're also interested in potentially having more on a single floor for, you know, accessibility and things like that as well. So again, the building hasn't been designed, but both the Department of Parks and Recreation and the DC Public Library have specifications for their modern facilities that they've been building all over the city. You guys have probably seen them. They're very beautiful. And so they will be looking at this facility and this site using those modern standards and specifications. So again, the building hasn't been designed yet, but they do have modern parameters for how they're doing that.
Also note your summary one page versus your draft document, which is supposed to be the detailed document that the one pager is based upon. Is that true? The draft 18 and 19 is supposed to be the detail?
Yeah. Based on the zoning, yeah.
And that document is currently not updated to your summary document. Is that true?
Might be, I don't know. If you found something wrong in it, I'd be happy to know what you found incorrect on it.
Yeah, my point is the detail usually is what the summary is based upon. You don't have the detailed document updated yet. You have your summary document, which you presented. That's my point.
Okay, we're gonna have on. Let's go to Snicker online, then Chris Cotton online, then we'll come back to the community. Just a reminder, please keep your comments to 1 to 2 minutes. We have to exit the community center at.
Yeah, well, when you all leave, you have to help with the chairs. So we got to get out of here by 9. So
Very quick.
then we're gonna have to close up stuff. So
Yes, hello, I'm Snigdha Prakash. I have a couple of things to say, and they're more by way of comments than anything else. First, I have to say that while I appreciate that much effort has gone into this meeting, it has also been profoundly alienating. I still do not understand. I have not heard anyone from the ANC explain why we are giving up our green space, our library, and our community center. No one has made an argument that makes any sense. And second, And I address myself to the chair here, and I hope she will take note. We are 3 years into a pandemic. Why can we not hold a public meeting on Zoom where people can be heard? This is no way to run a public meeting. If you read the chat, you can see that every minute, every 2 or 3 minutes, people are saying that we cannot hear what's being said. There are 80 some people on this public chat here who can't hear what's being said. So is this really a meeting that's intended to invite participation or not? It's very frustrating. I have lived in this neighborhood for 2 decades. I love it. And I want to participate, and it's painful that my efforts to participate are circumvented in this way. That's all I have to say. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Chris,
Hi, can you hear me?
yes.
Hi, good evening, everybody. It's just a few quick questions. So I think what I heard from the Office of Planning is that this zoning envelope, if it were to pass by the zoning commission, would be the by right zoning envelope. So I just think it's kind of interesting that we keep hearing, but there's not a project yet. There's no buildings yet. You know, this is just the envelope. But if the envelope goes and it's by right, nobody's really going to have any influence on the project or the building as long as it's within that envelope. So I just want to, make sure that if I'm wrong on that, correct me. Okay. So the second point is Mr. Lawson, where the small area plan?
Chris, you're coming in a little, you're coming in a little muffled. Can you speak closer to your mic?
Okay, is that any better?
Much better.
Okay, sorry about that. So I guess the first point I was trying to make was if this zoning envelope is approved by the zoning commission, the projects that fit within that envelope are by right. And therefore, any project or building would never come back to the community for oversight or review because it's by right. The envelope is set. So I just want to put that out there. If I'm wrong on that, correct me. The other thing is I'm hoping if Joel Lawson or anybody from the Office of Planning can tell me where in the small area plan it says cover the public site, the Civic Commons with an 80% lot occupancy. Where does it say that in the small area plan or in the comp plan?
Joel, can you answer that?
I'm sorry, what was-
Well, what we do with zoning, and what we did with this zoning is, once again, we based it on the MU4. MU4 allows a 100% lot occupancy. MU3, the current MU3 that you have along the corridor, allows 100% lot occupancy. So 100% lot occupancy is permitted on this property right now. Okay?
No, but that's not my question.
We proposed instead and that's for non-residential. For residential development, the lot occupancy limit in this zone is 80%. So we propose to make the lot occupancy the same. And this is the maximum amount of the property that you could cover with buildings is 80%. So we decreased the lot occupancy, the amount of property that could be covered with buildings, from 100% to 80%. And just like with this building, it'll be up to the community and DEMPED and the developers to decide, how does that actually work out on this property? Will it be 80%? Will it be something other than that? It's the same decision that you make on your own properties at home. Your houses are allowed a certain lot occupancy. Depending on the zone, it's somewhere between 40 and 60%. Some properties do, and lots of properties don't.
If I could,
So
okay, if I could
we're
just, I'm sorry, I know time is of the
we're
essence.
proposing to establish a more restrictive lot occupancy than exists in other MU zones to set
Okay,
the
Mr.
standard,
Lawson,
to set,
just,
to
I'm
set the
sorry,
tone, I
we're
guess,
against a time
that
constraint. I just had a
conversation
quick
needs to
question.
happen regarding where the open space goes. We're happy to take another look at the lot occupancy. You know, and we've certainly heard from people here that lot occupancy
Okay,
is a
can I
big
just keep
issue.
going? I'm sorry. I know you
Just
guys up
know
against the
that
time block
the more you
here.
restrict lot occupancy,
Oh,
the more
gosh.
chance you'll have that the library and the rec center, which will be built on this property, will not be on one level. Because we know the kind of space that they want for those two facilities. And those two facilities would not fit within a 60% lot occupancy. So you'd start to stack portions of it, which is absolutely fine. That's entirely possible. I'm just saying there are always trade-offs. So once you start to stack, the civic uses, that means less housing on the site.
Can you all hear me?
Because there's a height limit. So the more height that's taken up by civic facilities, the less height you have to meet some of the housing goals that the comprehensive plan sets out for Ward 3. So I'm just saying there's always compromises, there's always give and take. We're happy to take another look at it. You know, we've heard you loud and clear that this is a big issue with the community. So
the other, if I could just keep going, I just ask, can you hear me? Can you get?
Your questions about.
Okay, thank you, Eric Martell. So
Hello?
isn't it true, this is a zoning question. Isn't it true that co-locating public facilities and private residences on the same vertical footprint mix two unaligned functions, each with inherently different interests, and are governed by different rules, regulations, and building codes, creating, isn't that true? The two different building codes operating now on the same footprint.
yeah, there are different uses, but it exists. It can certainly happen. It exists in the district and it certainly exists in lots of other communities as well. So that's not a stumbling block.
And doesn't that create potential legal residential interests? And the residential interests will be when people are in residences, make conflict over any possible issues, perhaps use of grounds or whatever, that potentially be an endless possibility of legal conflict.
Not that I know of, but I guess so.
Have you remember there was a big issue around the air rights around the rebuilding of Grand Central Station in New York?
Okay, let's go to the next question.
Yeah, I would just say mixed use buildings exist all over the city. You know, there's mixed use buildings in your neighborhood. So, you know, yes, there can be conflicts, but there certainly doesn't have to be.
Hi, Cheryl Barnes, Chevy Case Voice again. It looks to me that what you created here for the Upper Avenue corridor is very much in congress with our neighborhood. Yet perhaps there's there are a lot of row houses on the west end where there are very tall buildings, but it doesn't really seem to have anything to do with this neighborhood. That's my first criticism of it. It doesn't look like it's planned, it looks like it's plot. So just my initial impression, artistic pick. The other thing that I'd like to ask you is how much lot coverage currently does the building take up now? What do we have right now?
I'm sorry, I don't know.
You don't know?
You said, yeah.
I just want it, I want it for everybody.
They said 40%, roughly 40%.
40%, so we're talking about doubling that coverage of the lot. That seems like an awful.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I'd like to do with it is to again urge you to look at Councilmember Franklin's letter, February 9th, and just slow down and really think about what the community wants, because it's not this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Claudia?
I'm Claudia Russell. I live in the hood. As urban designers, I'm wondering, don't you think that people intrinsically strive to develop a sense of place? I'm questioning this. As urban designers, don't you think people intrinsically strive for a sense of place?
What makes Chevy Chase unique? Sense of place is typically considered positive quality
For our well-being. And I'm wondering where that vision is.
I mean, you're the planners. And you've heard about boxes, you've heard about FAR. But we haven't gotten to that feeling that everybody's here for. This is a community. How is that expressed? What are the unique qualities? Where is our sense of place? Where is our sense of pride of place? I don't see it. I don't think we see it. And I think it's absolutely critical. At one point, I talked to someone, and this was like 2 years ago, in the office, and I said, we see numbers, we hear numbers. Would you describe the neighborhood that you're using this as? And he said, 14th Street. This isn't 14th Street. This is Chevy Chase. We're a unique place. We have the Avalon. We have green space. We have detached homes. This is the place to reconsider this bulk of a building on a landscape that has a lot of depth of art and soul. I hope that you will think about that as urban designers and people who work for the planning departments to recognize the soul of this group. Thank you.
Thank you. Go on.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I live in Chase. I heard you speak a lot about base the zoning on the comprehensive plan, a small area plan.
But a house built on sand, not sand, and there are deep flaws in
The comprehensive plan, small area plan, as
regards to Chevy Chase. Specifically in the comprehensive plan, all the language that took out consideration of
infrastructure for parking, traffic.
Tools, parks was removed. Why would you base,
zoning on a flawed process? The Office of Planning, when I went to speak with them about the small area plan, I asked them to understand the utilization of our schools. They didn't know that they were 120, 140% over capacity.
They didn't know the size of the schools.
The small area plan completely disregarded the 2018 ANC survey where people wanted lower heights. It completely disregards the special relationship that we have with these gardens being here, installed here, maintained here by neighbors. They show that in indoor outdoor, they give a $5 on top of the metro fence in front of Chevy Chase, not this beautiful garden that we have out here. So please, when you base it on these plans, you are basing it on a flawed, you're not basing it on what we want in our community, and that is a problem. This is a civic site. I am a teacher, and I will tell you that our civic sense is completely so much when I started teaching 25 years ago.
Students were out of their schools, they
Lost their sense of duty, they lost their sense of responsibility, they lost their sense of community.
What they want is what's right.
And you need to have civic institutions that are in a special place where people can gather as a community to create that sense of civic community and duty. And you need that for our society. You ask any teacher if they have a recital, is it on by no peril. You ask any judge, you ask any policeman, and the civic society is under attack. It is brave. We need to build it, not by mixing private profit with our civic society. We need to have clear, designated civic spaces consistent with the values of our community. Thank you.
Laura. We are at 3 minutes before we have to clear the building. Please limit your comments, 30 seconds or less.
Miles McLean, my family and I have lived on 5500 block, 39th Street for 28 years.
Trees, it's right there. And I have a number of procedural and substantive concerns about how to get there. One thing that of the planning, you're all speaking as though the small area plan is an inflexible thing. But when we went through that process, we were told it had real flexible, that had a lot, no enforceability, and now it sounds like you're using it as a weapon. One of the things that my wife and I want to make sure we get clear tonight is we believe strongly this is not a surplus property. So calling out the city of that town, that's always calling out, not following the rules, sorry, very much. In this process, holding secret meetings and blatantly siding with developers does not make a conspiracy theorist. Public land belongs in public hands. My wife and I have been participating in this process from early on in 2021. We helped draft the Chevy voice petition, and I think we would all greatly benefit by dropping the words conspiracy theory from our lexicon and opening our minds to the possibility of others' interpretation. When one hears something labeled conspiracy theory, the natural reaction is to dismiss that theory. That is not a good way to get to the truth. Conspiracy theories are actually just theories that are labeled as such to discourage further investigation. In light of such comments regarding conspiracy theories recently on some internet websites and chats in this neighborhood and lies, and after repeated comments we've heard participating in a lot of these virtual meetings and in person like tonight, ANC members during recent meetings, just want to remind ANC principles of a representative democracy. No ANC commissioner can know or presume to know what neighbors can't come to the meeting on. Announcing that you as an ANC commissioner are planning to make decisions and vote accordingly on what you blindly call the missing majority based on presuming that you know what an SAP is, what's in it, etc. Much less there what's going on, and are totally on board with the surplusing the mayor, developers, without question, not to mention this is not done. We talked to a bunch of our neighbors, and they certainly don't feel like you're reading their minds. Even if you were capable of such, in a representative democracy, one has to show up to vote to get counted. Similarly, repeated telling me those citizens are participating in these meetings and committee discussions that the issues raised are invalid because they're not what the mayor wants, they're not what the ASAP, or can't do that because our county doesn't want that. Developers won't go for that. Again, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this is supposed to work. We, the people, voted for all in office. We pay the taxes you're allocating and spending. We built this neighborhood into something desirable, not just by our tax dollars, but civic participation, volunteers in our schools, libraries, and neighborhood for 20 and 30 years for these people. You don't work here or for even people in other parts of the city. You work for us. Please stop trying to pretend otherwise. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you. Final comment. Final comment.
I'll try to be fast. I'd like to also make a comment about affordable housing. And I think what I want to push back against is what I think is a caricature of this neighborhood, that there are no affordable apartments here now. So we have kinds of affordable. We have Regency House, which has been there a long time. For low income citizens. We have a number of Section 8 vouchers now in the apartment buildings from here down to but that's actually easier down to Civic Park. And third, we have what's called naturally affordable.
Naturally occurring. Naturally occurring.
And this will just take a second. I make a personal statement with regard to that, which is that the youngest of my grown sons, who works as a security officer at the soldiers' home, taking care of old vets, as he himself is a vet. He earns $44,000 a year. He lives in a quite nice apartment along Connecticut Avenue. It is reasonably spacious, certainly with a nice living kitchen, which I don't have, and it's even spacious enough for his Australian Shepherd dog. Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to thank OP for coming out tonight and giving us another run at the draft zoning changes. And I think, Joel, as you heard, we still have some major issues with your draft. Thank you, everyone online. Thank you, everyone in person. I really appreciate your cooperation and listening to each other. Just to conclude the meeting, I'm going to ask that ANC committee and task force reports be suspended. We don't have any commission business. None? Okay. 9:05, meeting adjourned. If everyone could grab their chair.
Yeah.
Don't forget everybody.
I had to. I mean, I had to.
I mean, guys, I didn't.